Hello, everybody, and welcome today to the third session of the CVIA Careers Month. So today I'm joined by Matt Craven from CVIA, who was with us last week. And today he's going to talk to us about developing a career plan and job hunting strategy. So it's going to be a really, really interesting topic. So I hope you're all taking notes. But for anyone who's not taking notes, we will be posting these recordings on our website at the end of the month when all the career sessions are done. For a little bit of shopkeeping with today's session, Matt's going to talk for about 40 to 50 minutes, and we'll do Q&A at the end. So I highly advise all of you to put any of your questions in the Q&A box on Zoom. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Matt. So Matt, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ben, and welcome everybody. I hope you're all enjoying the lovely weather. And thanks for taking a break from that to join me on this presentation, which is all about developing a career plan and job hunting strategy, which is quite an interesting topic. So let's just a couple of small bits before we start. Might be worthwhile for those of you who don't know me, if I just do a little bit of an intro, really. So I'm the founder of CVIA Careers, which is kind of short for the CV and interview advisors. So I run the business. We've been going for about 16 years. I used to be a recruiter. My area of expertise is kind of personal branding and career development. The business, we've delivered over, I think probably about 1,500 workshops now to approximately 1 million people in 70 countries around the world. And we've worked one-to-one with over 20,000 professionals. So I've got a team of nearly 40 people over here. So yeah, that's us. So you'll have me for the next best part of an hour, really, and we'll just go through this PowerPoint presentation. So without further ado, let's have a look at the current state of affairs. So I really want to make the point that it has been for the last several months an applicant's market, but that is a little bit of a red herring in a way, because although it's not difficult, I say difficult, finding a job has become easier because there's more vacancies and less candidates around. But a lot of employers are quite reticent to increase salaries. So because it's a kind of candidates market, candidates are wanting more money than what a lot of employers are prepared to pay. So what a lot of employers are doing now is saying, okay, well, we're going to hire people earlier in their career and train them up, which in a way bodes quite well for the people who are at an early stage of their career. But, and there is a big but, there is an impending recession. And I've been saying this for about 12 months. Nothing was more obvious to me than we were heading very quickly towards a recession. And when that hits, I think we'll quickly see more equilibrium in the labour market, in the sense that job seekers will be in lesser demand, and there'll be more of them around. So I think the market's going to change. But as it has always been, getting a job is one thing, but getting a job that's a promotion, a more senior role, that's a little bit harder. Organizations are more likely to promote from within than they are to hire somebody who needs to step into a role, or step up into a role. Employers are having to up their game, but those that have upped their game in terms of attracting talent, they're difficult to make progress with. So the top employers are in very high demand. The ones that look after their staff the best, they're in high demand. So the competition for those jobs is still very high. So if you're going to go and work for some average organization that probably, not probably, but there are organizations out there that might not be as desirable to work for, that's easier than it might have been previously, although that might change very soon. But the top employers are still very difficult, and you've got to really work hard to secure those opportunities. Organizations want to hire faster. We've seen that they they need people, they need them now. So the more evidence you can give of your abilities through your CV and LinkedIn profile and your interview skills, the better. And the sort of main point that leads into the rest of the presentation is that, as with all things in life, it's those people who are prepared and have a plan that are more likely to succeed. There's that saying, isn't there, that failing to plan is planning to fail. So think about that with your career. Don't let your career happen to you. You need to plan it and be strategic about it. This is the thing that you do for a third of your life. Make no bones about it. We all spend an awful lot of time at work, whatever that might be. I'm going to say sat at our desks, but that might not apply to everybody. But certainly we spend a lot of time at work, and we probably spend more time with our work colleagues than we do our family. And the job that we do is intrinsically linked to financial security, happiness. It puts a roof over our head. It puts food on the table. So planning the thing that does all that, that's got to be just an absolute given, hasn't it? So that's where I'm coming from with this session. So first thing I want you to get you thinking about is your big picture. So some questions to ask yourself. Why do you go to work? And you might assume that everybody goes to work for the same reasons that you go to work. It's not true. There are several reasons why people go to work. So why do you go to work? What's your motivation? What factors influence your career choices? So you've got to kind of know yourself in this way in order to really kind of understand what you want your career journey to look like. If you've already got some work experience, what do you like about your current or your last role? What didn't you like about it? What does your perfect role look like? What are your financial needs? I've managed quite large teams of people in the past, with people with completely different financial requirements, ranging from the hungry, I want to earn £1 million before I'm 30, to I've got a rich daddy and I don't really need to work at all. I'm doing it for different reasons. What are your financial needs? And then you've got to start putting together a bit of a plan. So are your goals achievable? And this is something that's quite interesting. A lot of people want to be in a certain job. That's where I see myself. I want that job. And their whole mission is to get from A to B. And as with lots of things in life, going from A to B isn't normally the route that one takes. Sometimes there's a destination point in between, especially with your career. Sometimes you've got to go from A to B to C to get to where you want to be. I hope that makes sense. It's just sometimes people try to make that big leap all in one go when you need to put another step in between to gain additional experience to facilitate that next move. So that's your big picture. And it's important to kind of think about those things and ponder over them and make some notes and really think deeply. Things I didn't do when I left university. Like I say, if you don't know your destination, how are you going to get there? So understand yourself, think about all those things, think about your big picture and figure out how that relates to your career plan. And then you can start thinking about what your destination is going to be and how you're going to get there. So a career plan is essentially a document which just says where you want to be short-term, medium-term, and long-term. And I'm not going to go into this in finite detail because I feel my job today is to just get you all to at least have some kind of career plan. The vast majority of people don't have one, but the ones who do, I guarantee you, get further in their career faster and earn more money. And it's not all about money, because your goals might not be all about money. It just might be being in the right job. I can honestly say, hand on heart, I spent 10 years in jobs I didn't enjoy because I just, that saying, oh, I just fell into something. I fell into recruitment. Everybody falls into recruitment. No, hardly anybody goes and studies as a degree and then says, I'm going to be a recruitment consultant. It's the sort of thing you just fall into, and then you end up doing it. It's reasonably good money. It's a good crack, nice, good people. It's fun, it's dynamic. And then you find yourself several years later thinking, do you know what? I'm not sure I enjoyed it. And you kind of think, well, was that wasted time? Would I have been happier doing something different? And that's the danger of letting your career happen and just falling into a job. So have a plan. Once you've figured out where you want to be, then what you've got to do is a skills gap analysis. You've got to figure out what skills you need to be successful in applying for the job or the jobs you want to target next. So if you have what skills are needed, what skills you've got, in the middle is what skills you need to gain. Pretty simple concept. So we use the IPS formula. So identify the skills you need, plug your skills gaps, and then showcase those skills in your application. And then you should be able to secure what you want to secure. So you need a career autobiography. So I'm going to show you one of those next. But a career autobiography is a chart, a record, a log of all the, I'm going to say, good professional things you've done so far. So it could be a project that you were involved with. It could be a tricky situation you had to deal with. It could be an achievement. It could be a situation that you very much learned from. This could be something at school, at university. It could be extracurricular, or it could be in a job. But you have an career autobiography. So an autobiography is like, it's a series of events that have happened in a famous person's life that other people might be interested in reading. It's exactly the same thing, but just in a career sense. So this is all your professional, all the key events that have happened in your professional life that you think a future employer might be interested in hearing about. So once you've got this career autobiography, which I'll show you shortly, you can then analyze and research the target roles that you want to apply for, identify the skills that are needed. You then use your career autobiography to identify the skills that you have or haven't. Then you do your skills gap analysis. And then you can set yourself a plan on how you're going to gain those skills. And then you add those to your career autobiography. So, I mean, this might sound, I hope it doesn't sound complicated, but all we're really saying is to be successful in applying for a job, you need to have the skills that they need you to have, the skills, the knowledge, and the track record, to be precise, that they need you to have. So the only thing you need to worry about is, A, do I have them? If I have them, how do I promote them in the best way through my CV and LinkedIn profile and my interview technique? But if I don't have them, how do I go about getting them? That's all we're concerning ourselves here. What skills do you need? Do you have them? Yes, I have them. Okay, how do I promote them? No, I don't have them. Okay, how do I go and get them? And then how do I promote them? And if you've got the skills and you can promote them adequately, you will succeed in applying for the roles you want to apply for. So that's all we're talking about here. So let's have a look at that career autobiography. Now, I'm going to suggest it's a spreadsheet. So it's an Excel or Google Sheets, whatever you use, it's a spreadsheet. And these tabs down the bottom are the skills that you need for the jobs you want to apply for. And each time you click one of these tabs, you've got an opportunity to add a little story or a case study or an event or a situation or an experience, whatever you want to call it, whatever of those words resonate with you, but you've got the opportunity of adding an experience that you've had that proves you have that skill. And I'd suggest writing these as little mini case studies And if anybody was on my session last week where we talked about writing case studies on CVs using the STAR methodology, that's how we would write these case studies: situation, task, actions, and result. So this could be a project, an achievement. It could be something from school, university, business school, or even from your work experience. But these are little stories, little case studies written in STAR that prove you have the skill that your future employers want you or need you to have. That's a career autobiography. Okay, so now let's have a look at your personal brand, because this is really important as well. Part of developing a career strategy or a career plan and a job hunting strategy is first about thinking about how you want the world to perceive you, or how you want the job market to perceive you. So, and this is something you should be managing, not letting it happen by accident. I think, did I say last week about I started a job on a management graduate trainee program with an American car hire company that had just moved to the UK. And there was 3 of us that joined at the same time, me, Ed, and Andrew. And we were all pretty good at what we did. We all reached, I mean, I became a sort of senior middle manager, and I opened up branches and transformed underperforming operations. And, you know, I did okay. Ed, similar. But Andrew was a very good self-promoter. He said the right thing to the right people at the right time. He didn't get drunk at parties. He didn't do stupid things. He dressed very smartly. He dressed as he wanted. He used to say, you dress and you walk as you want people to see you. He was talking about that 25 years ago, before personal branding existed. And he was immaculately presented. He had nice suits, always dry cleaned, crisp shirts, well-presented tie. He looked the part. He got a lot further. He got to the level above. He got to senior management, whereas me and Ed only got to middle management. So there's a message in that somewhere, you know. And some people might say, I can't be bothered with all that. Well, why? Because I wish I'd bothered with it. I wish I hadn't been as maybe immature in those early stages of my career. Maybe there was 1 or 2 parties I went to where I had 1 or 2 many, you know, beverages that I didn't need to have. Maybe I was a bit too maverick. All these things matter. So you got to decide how you want people to perceive you and how you want the recruitment market to see you. So imagine a company without a brand, without an identity. That would be strange, wouldn't it? All companies have some kind of corporate image. It's the same with people. It's all about managing your personal brand, and that feeds into your career plan. So another way to put it, it's about controlling or managing your own PR, your own public relations. So be your own PR team is what I'm really trying to say here. You don't need to, you know, this isn't crazy stuff. This is just being careful about what you put on social media. This is about being careful about how you speak to people. It's about having the maturity if one day you're feeling really like you might explode because you're so frustrated about something, to just walk away and come back to it. You know, those sorts of things. And it's just being proactive about how you want the world, your industry, your stakeholders, your team, a potential employer to think about you. Jeff Bezos sums it up perfectly, you know, the CEO of Amazon. Your personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Okay, so there is a way to measure your personal brand actually, which is your SSI, which is something you can get from LinkedIn. So if you go to this URL here, if you're on LinkedIn, you'll see something like this, and it measures your personal brand across 4 key areas, which is establishing your professional brand, finding the right people, engaging with insights, and building relationships. So it's a good measure of how well you're doing with this stuff. But interestingly, LinkedIn did a survey of 1,500 client-facing professionals, and they found those with a high SSI got promoted 17 months faster than those with a low SSI. So anybody who's skeptical about this stuff, don't be, because statistically the evidence is there. 17 months faster, nearly 2 years faster. That's astonishing. So have a look at that. And then start thinking about how you describe your career journey. And this might be quite simple for a lot of you if you're early in your career. But as you develop your career, you need to understand your career story, or your career narrative, as I like to call it. What has been your career journey so far? And can you articulate that as a narrative to a third party? So talk about, everybody should be able to do this. Everybody should kind of write this down and be able to do this freely and easily. Where did it start? So for a lot of you, it started at school or university. You then went on and did an MBA. But then what was your next job? You know, if you're somebody, and you might not be, but if you were, say, for example, 2 or 3 jobs into your career now, where did it start? What happened in between? You'll eventually get to where you are now, but you've got to weave in your key selling points. So I might say, well, for me, it started, I went to university, I studied business, I got a second-class degree, and my first job was selling door-to-door on council estates in Suffolk, which is a real baptism of fire, because it was the early 90s when we had a recession, but I learned to sell. I learned to sell well. And then I went to work for a newspaper company in Norfolk, and I was selling 2 businesses. I was selling advertising space, 2 businesses, and I was on the road in a car. That was all very interesting. Away from home, my first time after university, you know, living away from home, and you know, it was interesting, and you know, realized that I didn't want to do sales exclusively for my whole career. So then I ended up getting a job in the graduate trainee program with Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and I stayed with them for about 6 years, and I worked my way from doing well, basically being a trainee all the way through to sort of senior middle management. And what they used, and this is where I weave in my selling point, what they used me as is the guy who would set up new things. So I think I set up 3 new branches that were just basically set up from scratch with nothing, no cars on the lot, so to speak. And I built them up from nothing to profitability. In fact, I was the first person in the UK to make operating profit. And then I kind of realized I wasn't going any further with that company. So then I, shall we say, fell into recruitment, and I did everything from junior contract recruitment through to senior exec headhunting, and everything in between. And once again, I was used as somebody who would build things from scratch. I built a number of new divisions. So I built up the Hayes Risk and Compliance division, made that into one of the market leading risk and compliance sort of niche recruitment businesses in the city. And I was asked to turn around the underperforming Moorgate business. I took the Ilford contract business from obscurity to be the 3rd biggest contract business in the UK. So you had central London, you had Leeds and Ilford. That was some achievement. So again, for me, it's always been about transforming or building. And then 16 years ago, I started the CV and interview advisors. Originally just me. Now I've got 40 people working for me. Last year, we did business in 63 countries around the world. We are considered one of the biggest and best at what we do in the world, genuinely. And that's where I am now. So that's my career narrative. And that's probably boring, so I apologize, but you should all, I mean, that took me about 2 minutes to go through. You should all be able to do the same thing. And as you progress through your career, continue to do the same thing. But the crucial thing there is, could you see how I weaved in my key selling point? building and transforming, building and transforming. That's what I've done throughout my career. And that's how you develop your career narrative, or describe your career journey. And then you want to talk about where you're heading next and why. So I'm not heading anywhere next. So, but well, it might be, but at some point, but not right now. But you'll have an idea where you're heading next and why. So talk about that. So that's your career journey. In a way, this is how you would answer the question, tell me about yourself. Okay, so what have we talked about so far? So you talked about your big picture. We talked about developing a career autobiography and a career plan, doing that skills gap analysis, talked about defining your personal brand. We've talked about being able to talk through your career journey. So already we've talked about quite a lot of stuff there. So then we get down to the whole bit around promoting yourself. So your elevator pitch. So this is more specific, more granular. So we started real high level, didn't we? We started off with your big picture. Then we talked about, your career journey, your career narrative, and your personal brand, and mapping out all those key events that have happened in your professional life and your education so far, and creating that career autobiography, doing the skills gap. Now we get to the point where all that's in place, and it's just a question of sending off your application to roles. So what do you need to do to get that right? Well, you need an elevator pitch. You need to sell yourself. It's important to realize your CV and LinkedIn profile. This is your sales brochure, and the interview is a sales meeting. It's all selling, and it's selling yourself for what would probably be a fairly substantial contract, an employment contract. So, okay, you've done an MBA, so I'm going to plump for the fact that a lot of you will be around, maybe some more, some less, but let's just say 50K. If you were somebody looking for a 50K job, you are essentially shooting for if you add up everything it costs that employer to hire a 50K candidate, that's about £250,000 contract, assuming you stick around for 3 years. So when you are applying for a job and going for interviews, what you're really doing is you are creating a bid and going to a meeting, a sales meeting, to pitch for a £250,000 3-year contract. That's a great way to think about it, to really focus your mind. So this elevator pitch, think about your target audience, i.e. your future employers. What are their needs? It's not about you, it's about what they want, and do you have it? Think about what you are as a professional. That needs to match the job title. Think about your value proposition and your professional purpose. So your value proposition is the value that you're proposing you can offer a future employer. What are you really good at? And then your big four. Your big four are your top 4 skills or strengths. So this opening statement on your CV and on LinkedIn, tell people what you are, what your value proposition is, and your top 4 strengths or skills. And then you would also use that in the interview room as well. But that's your starting point to being able to sell yourself. Think of it this way: if you don't know, if you were a salesperson and you didn't know anything about the product or service that you were selling, how would you be able to sell it effectively? And it's the same for most job seekers. They fall into the trap of thinking they know themselves, because it's me. Of course, I know myself, but you don't. You know yourself personally and emotionally, but you do not know yourself professionally if you're like the vast majority of people. So this process I'm describing to you, this is about getting to know yourself professionally so that you can sell yourself effectively. So where do you communicate all this? Well, your big picture and your personal brand and your career journey, all this stuff is in your CV, your profile, that section at the top. It's in your LinkedIn About section, the main section on LinkedIn. It's in interviews when they ask you to tell them about yourself. And And remember, 92% of recruiters and hiring managers make their shortlisting decisions solely on the contents of your CV, resume, or LinkedIn profile. But all this stuff that we've talked about, you're describing in these three areas here. So this is the example CV, and I showed you all this last week. I don't know how many of you were on last week, but this is a CV. So this opening statement is really important, and you would have multiple of those depending on how many different types of roles you might want to apply for. That key skills section there, that's another great way of describing what your skills are. And if you put together that career autobiography, the skills you have should be a lot more obvious, and then you can make sure the right ones are in there and they match the job description. And we talked about having star case studies in your career autobiography. If there are any real standout ones, which they should be, projects, achievements, they can be just lifted into your CV. And that makes the CV really super targeted and evidence-based, which is crucial. Okay. So just to recap, and we did this last week, but I just want to show you. So that's what we're talking about, this opening statement on your CV. What are you? What's your value proposition? And what are your top 4 key strengths or skills? Now, granted, this is for a COO, but I'm guessing that all of you will know what a COO does because you'll have done it in your MBA. So think about a COO. We've said what this person is, an experienced chief operating officer. What's their value proposition? Well, they're an expert in transforming and leading underperforming or stagnant financial services sector businesses. And what are their top 4 key strengths? And we've listed them. And the bit in red, we've written these in kind of a features and benefits style. So the red bit is the benefit to the feature or the skill we've described. So that's how you should be writing your profile or your summary on your CV. And then how does that differ on LinkedIn? So LinkedIn, I'm going to assume that you all know how important LinkedIn is to job seeking. This isn't Facebook, it's not Instagram, it's not TikTok. This is your professional website, if you like, that recruiters use to find talent. So we use the who sees formula. So we tell people who or what you are. We tell people what your strengths are. We give a couple of examples. We then talk about your ethos or what your philosophy is to work. What is it that you're passionate about? And then we talk about skills. And in fact, LinkedIn's just changed its platform, just done a major update where you can now list skills under each job. But that's the about section on LinkedIn, and you use the who sees formula to put that together. Okay. Quick popcorn break before we move on. People often wonder what we do, so I'm just going to tell you very quickly. So we obviously create CVs and LinkedIn profiles for people. We've done over 20,000, in fact, for people all over the world. We also do coaching, career coaching, thought leadership coaching, job market coaching, interview coaching, all that kind of stuff. But our CV and LinkedIn package, you get matched up with a senior person. You have a 2-hour, very detailed fact-finding session where we talk through a lot of the things we've talked about today. Discuss your career direction, define your value proposition, your go-to-market strategy, and we basically write your CV and LinkedIn profile for you to give you, and I'm going to say, hand on heart, a massive advantage over everybody else applying for the same jobs as you. That's what we do. So what would a job hunting strategy look like? So you've already formulated a career plan. You've created a career autobiography. You've done your skills gap analysis. You've thought about your big picture. You've written a killer CV and a great LinkedIn profile. Then what do? Well, you're going to identify all the relevant job boards, including LinkedIn, where the jobs that you're interested in exist. Then you're going to apply for those jobs. You're also going to identify who the relevant recruitment agencies are and make contact with them. You're probably going to make a list of target employers that you really want to work for and send a CV and cover letter speculatively to those target companies. You're going to identify key recruitment decision makers in your market, and you're going to connect with them on LinkedIn. You're going to directly approach in-house HR and recruitment teams for the companies that you really want to work for. You're going to release thought leadership pieces into the world. So that's a whole topic in its own right. But you want to be thinking about topics that you're an expert in or might become an expert in, and write articles and run webinars and things like that about those topics and release them into the world. That really helps. And when you apply for jobs, you're going to tailor your CV perfectly each and every time. And then the other important thing to do is to keep a chart of which agencies you've submitted your CV to for each role. So that's kind of a job hunting strategy. It doesn't have to be that complicated. And go back to that CV that I showed you. Just bear with me. Yeah, so if you've got multiple profile summaries for the different roles you apply for, you change the skills each time, then you've got a whole heap of these case studies in your career autobiography, and you put the best 3 or the most relevant 3 in each time, then you can super tailor your CV perfectly each and every time. Okay. So then we'll talk about, have I jumped forward too far? I have. Yeah, let's talk about job hunting from a networking perspective. So the first thing to say is, you don't want to be hiding under a rock. It's sometimes who you know as much as what you know. That's an age-old saying now, isn't it? Who do you know? If you've got contacts that you can get introductions from, that's priceless. I mean, I know a lot of people. If I was ever unemployed, there's a lot of doors I could go knocking on, and I've probably helped other people out at various points in the past and could call in a few favors. So it's who you know. So don't hide under a rock. And like I say, you can tap into your network, friends, contacts, LinkedIn connections. Whose door can you go knocking on to help you get a job? And then you want to be building a network of decision makers on LinkedIn. So connect with decision makers, recruiters, peers, people who might be able to support you, people that are good at doing intros to other people. We call them connectors. So build a network of useful people. You can search for people and connect with them and send them a message on LinkedIn. You should be doing that. The right people, of course, in the right way. You can also identify jobs and use some of these same methods as well. And the key really is that if you found a job that you're interested in, who do you know that works there? Or who do you know that knows somebody that works there? And can you get an introduction? Because an introduction is 100 times more successful than a cold approach. So you could just make an online application, but if you can get an intro to the right people, that is really powerful. And as I said earlier, if I needed to go knocking on doors, I've probably got some favors I can call in. So throughout your career, make a point of being nice to people and doing people favors. Help them, help people, because that will come back to you. That's the way karma works. You help people, and somewhere down the line, some help will come your way. That's just how things work. And eventually, also with networking, a lot of that's done on LinkedIn, but you want to take that conversation offline. Meet with people. I know we've had COVID, and I know that and I don't mean this in a patronizing way, but I've got a son who's 13, and I worry for that generation because I find them quite unsociable. They'd rather send a text than pick up the phone. They'd rather be on Xbox than going out. And people have become quite unsociable. But the problem with that is business is often done face-to-face. Meeting with people, talking to people, having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee with somebody. That is a lot better than doing a Zoom call. I can promise you that. So, and when you approach people, try and find some common ground. If I'm interested at a job at XYZ company, I'm going to try and find out some stuff about XYZ company. And it might be that they've just done a charity event for, an end-of-life hospice or something like that. Then when I approach them, I can talk about the charity fund run that I did a while back along the same lines. I mean, it's a silly example, but sometimes that can just be the difference. Referencing some common ground when you approach somebody cold can make it feel less cold and a more warm approach. And networking into a job is what people call the hidden job market, and a high percentage of jobs are filled through personal recommendation and networking. Okay, so we'll do the Q&A shortly. I just want to draw your attention to some special offers that you can avail from us, which you will avail by going to that link there. And I don't know whether Ben can pop that into the chat or the Q&A, but that's where these offers live. And these run until next Tuesday, run for a week. So if you'd like us to do your CV and LinkedIn profile, we can do that for $299 plus VAT, and that's a substantial saving. If you'd like us to do your CV and LinkedIn profile, and you like the idea of having some extra case studies that you can chop in and out of your CV, $399 plus VAT, significant, massive discount. If you'd like us to help with some career planning, you can buy 3 hours of career planning for $249 plus VAT, saving £57. And if you'd like us to create a career autobiography for you with a starting point of 10 star case studies, $349, saving you £120. And that includes us researching the skills and creating that spreadsheet with all the tabs, and then creating 10 case studies as a starting point. And then you can take it on as a living, breathing document from there. We are 5-star rated. There is a full Monty package as well. So if you want the whole shooting match, then we've popped that option on that page that you can go to as well. So if you got any questions, email us. And that's about it, really. So Ben's going to jump back on now, and me and Ben are going to do a Q&A. Ben's going to read out any questions that might have come in, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Matt. It was very insightful. So far, we haven't actually had any questions now, so go wait another few minutes for people to post questions. So yeah, like I said, any questions, post them now. We can answer them straight away. Otherwise, you'll have to email and wait a few days for your response. I think we've got one through then as well. And what I've also done as well is I've posted the link that Matt has sent to the discount, so you can see on your screen now. So feel free to click that and go through to it. Grace has kindly asked here if it's possible to have your contacts, Matt. I think you're.
Yeah, I'm just typing it into the questions. So I'll send that to everybody. So I've put our telephone number here, and I've put our email address. So if anybody has any questions, wants to get in touch, please do so. So I've popped that in there for you. So yeah, I mean, some of these are, the full Monty package is a substantial investment. So you probably want to have a chat with us about that first. Some of them, not so much. Our clients tend to get really good return on investment. There's a lot of things people could spend their money on, isn't there? And in fact, I'm pretty certain I saw somebody at the supermarket on Sunday spending about this amount of money on burgers, sausages, and beer to take advantage of the warm weather. So it's putting it into perspective. I think investing in yourself is a really positive thing to do. So
I agree, especially the cost of living crisis. Food just getting more and more expensive. So yeah, I agree with you. Definitely invest in yourself, just all the thought leadership, lifelong learning, and pretty much a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about over the past 3 weeks, and for this month, the BJA Careers Month, is to kind of help better yourselves. So these are all tips, and the first session was on lifelong learning, so best way to become a lifelong learner using the BJA services. And then session 2 and 3 that Matt has kindly spoken at is all about using resources and ask people for help and actually go through different courses to make you more employable and, help you like search different jobs, have a better CV, job hunting strategies. So ultimately, there's a lot you can do for yourself that will help you now and further down the line.
Yeah, I think we've bamboozled everybody to the extent they've got no questions. So I think either that or everybody's just too hot and just wants to go and jump in a cold shower or whatever it might be. So that might be good. I think we got one come through though, Ben. Actually, I've just seen here. How can I find out how others perceive me to work on my personal brand? That's a great question, Emma. I think one good way to do that is to ask people, and that might be just asking people generally, and just in a social environment. How do I come across? What do you think? How do I come across to my team, or how do I come across to my bosses? Sometimes if you ask people to give you a real honest answer, they'll be quite happy to do that. I would want that sort of information when I'm doing, if you're in a job, when you have your annual appraisal, I know when you get to management level, you probably have a 360 appraisal and things like that. But when you get to that point where you're having an appraisal, ask those questions. Don't be wanting to get out of that room so damn quick that you don't learn anything important. Really take that feedback as a gift. Sit there and talk. Say to your boss, how do I come across? How do other people perceive me? What can I do better? And then, of course, the other obvious one is to go and do that LinkedIn SSI thing.
Definitely. Like the more you work on these little parts, so, actually finding out about your personal brand and what you are as a person, as long as you have an open mind and able to adapt and change it. For example, when you speak, if maybe you don't speak with much tonality, so you're very monotone, don't take that as an offensive comment. It's all constructive criticisms, and you can work on that to become a better person. So, but yeah, it's a very good question. Like Matt said, it's all about just asking people. Don't be afraid of the news.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today's session. Like I said, any other questions, feel free to either speak to myself. So send an email to membership@businessgraduatesassociation.com or reach Matt directly. So I think it was in the Q&A, it was posted as well. And for example, if you want to know more about it, it's there on the screen. You can see now, info@cvia.co.uk with any questions, and Matt will be able to help you. And even if you want to give a call and have a conversation about any of the topics we've talked about, because there's also a lot of other things that Matt can offer you as well. So don't be afraid to have a look through the website. Any final comments then, Matt, before we wrap up?
No, I suppose a good place to finish off will be just going right back to the start and just to really reinforce that message. And I think it's so central to what this Careers Month is all about, is that just invest in yourselves. And don't let your career happen to you. Be strategic about it. Think about it in the terms we described earlier. We do all spend probably far too much time at work, if we're really honest about it. But if we're going to spend that much time at work, let's really focus on that, invest in it, and make the best of it.
Of course. Well said. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining. That finalizes today's session, which is the third session of the BJ Careers Month. Join us next week on, I believe it's Wednesday, for the fourth session, which is Finding Career Purpose with Eloise, another guest speaker. So yeah, everyone have a great rest of your day. Stay safe in the heat, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. And thank you again, Matt, for your help.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks, everybody.
See everyone soon. Bye.